And yes, thank you very much. First, I really want to thank Ambassador Rihanna for being a true Pan-Africanist. I feel very, very inspired and invigorated by your speech. Now, I have questions here that have been raised. One was talking about how we can actually use African startup initiatives to deal with the disaster management. But you see, disaster management is a very wide subject because it depends on what kind of disaster you're talking about. Whether it is the issue of torrential rains, it's issues of flooding, it's issues of drought, it's issues of accidents and so on and so forth. So the disaster management is a very wide subject indeed. But we can, of course, use our African-owned indigenous technology to deal with issues that face us at a particular moment in time. I don't want to generalize on this particular subject here. But what I've been trying to do is to try to encourage our people to be more innovative and inventive rather than just trying to copy other people. But at the same time, you don't really want to reinvent the wheel because the wheel has already been invented. You don't need to waste your time trying to invent the wheel. Use the existing technology, modify it to deal with the situation at a particular moment in time. That's what I would say. About African Free Trade Association, AFTA. This is a very, very innovative idea. And it's a matter which time had come. It should have started much earlier. I mentioned yesterday when I was talking that AU, African Union, actually preceded the European Union. When the heads of state of independent African countries gathered in Addis Ababa in 1963, Europe had two different organizations. One was called European Free Trade Association. One was European Economic Commission at that time. But African heads of state came together and said they wanted to unite Africa. When they gathered there were also representatives from other non-liberated African countries at that time. My father was one of the delegates at that time, representing Kenya, which was not independent. And him and Nelson Mandela were the two who spoke on behalf of the liberation movement of the continent at that time. And the mood at that time was really very high. Sister Ambassador Ariana told you that there was the Casablanca group and there was the Monrovia group. And those two groups actually came from different political ideologies. There are those who are saying that continental government now, today, and that we are saying, no, we need gradualism. Let us first begin by consolidating independence, then we go to our regional blocks, use these regional blocks as building blocks for a united Africa. 63 years later, it has not come. Africa, continental free trade is, of course, an idea whose time had come. It should have come earlier. Europe moved much faster. They came from division and moved faster to consolidate union, and came and eventually went to the European Economic Community. From the European Economic Community, they came to European Union. which now then moved on to remove all the barriers that we were having before. Because now I mentioned yesterday that European trade, inter-European trade, stands at 70%. They will tell you that you African countries, you cannot trade together because you produce almost the same things. Yes, but the European countries produce the same things. And yes, they trade. Why is it not possible for African countries who are also producing the same things to trade together? There are many things that we African countries can actually exchange among themselves. But I mentioned to you yesterday that one of the barriers to inter-African trade is the issue of lack of adequate infrastructure between the countries. The second are what you call non-tariff barriers, which have been imposed by various member countries against each other. That we make it difficult for goods to move from one country to the other. And these non-tariff barriers can be removed easily. Even the issue of infrastructure mentioned is major. So many countries don't have connections. I'll give you an example. Between Kenya and Central African Republic, there's only South Sudan between Kenya and Central African Republic. But how do you get Kenyan goods to go to Central African Republic? There's no infrastructure, no roads, no railway. You must get a ship that will carry your goods from the port of Mombasa, go around the Cape, then along the western coast of Africa to the Cameroonian port of Douala, and then from there again by road to Bangui. The French and the British are much faster there than you. They get there before you. That's why in Bangui, they drink Kenyan tea, Christian as English breakfast tea. It goes first to England, then is then brought back to Central African Republic. But if you had an infrastructure, you would be able to export tea directly to Central African Republic, to Chad, to Niger, to all those land of countries. That's why we've been talking about the railway line, the LAPSET, that will come from the port of Lamu through Juba in South Sudan to Bangui and all the way to Kribi in the Cameroon to open up those land of countries there, and the inter-African trade will be easier. Even here, around West Africa, of course, there's trade, but it is not as it should be. African countries here are trading more with other countries outside. Africa goes to beg for the free trade, open up trade AGOA with the United States. But then the condition there is that you must accept the second-hand clothes to come from there back into your market. If you don't accept the second-hand clothes, there's no AGOA. That's you must accept used clothes there for your people. That's when they will allow you to send your goods there. Yet you can actually sell those goods here within the continent. This is the problem. We want to look for the days when we will be able to develop this proper infrastructure so that the intercontinental free trade can have a meaning. And we wanted to move this trade from 15% where it is to 40 or 50% within the next 10 to 15 years. That was my idea, had I been allowed to go to the African Union headquarters and to lead it. Now, The other question was the inclusion, that was from Bashir. The space for youth participation in governance. They used to say that, you see, the youth are the leaders of tomorrow. This is what we are being told. The youth are the leaders of tomorrow. But that tomorrow will never come. That's why we are saying that the youth today should be the leaders of today. African youth needs to be given space because, as I mentioned, there is the youth bulge in the continent. Over nearly 70% of our population today are below the age of 35. And these youth are actually impatient. But they're also tech-savvy. The artificial intelligence. So you can use the youth power and knowledge to leapfrog Africa. Because you see, Africa has lagged behind for a long time. I mentioned that Africa has got great potential. On this planet Earth, Africa has got the largest quantity of resources. But the paradox is that the richest is also the poorest in terms of living conditions of our people. So now the time has come for Africa to move forward using the youth energy and potential, and knowledge and skills to leapfrog. So the youth need to be given opportunity. But I want to say, don't wait to be given that opportunity, grab the opportunity. You've seen that it's not been possible for unity to come up to now. But I can see, I think, some kind of light now. African youth can help unite the continent. If the African people unite, Africa will be able to demonstrate that it is the richest continent. When they say that, they had said, earlier on, that workers of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your servitude. So I say the African youth, unite. You have nothing to lose but your exclusion. The youth can help to unite the continent of Africa by thinking Nigerian, thinking Kenyan, thinking Ghanaian, and so on and so forth. The older generations have shown that they're very exclusivist. That's why they've been unable to remove some of these barriers that make it difficult for African people to interact together. The visas. I've told them that the amount you get from the visa is too little compared to the amount of money which will come to the country by removing the visas. If you remove the visas, so many people will come. Tourists will come to your country. Businessmen will come to do business in your country much easily. But they don't see it. You get to the airport, you're humiliated, you have to wait for a very long time to be cleared, even if you have a visa. Still, you have a big problem passing through the immigration benches in most of African airports. At one time, I'm flying from Sana'a in Yemen, and I come and I land in Djibouti. But the plane was delayed in Yemen, so that by the time I'm landing in Djibouti, my connecting flight is already taxiing. So I have to now wait for 24 hours. But then I'm being told, open your luggage. My luggage is being opened up here. They're moving things like that. Then they tell me, put them back. And then you are humiliated at the airport for a very long time. And then you are going to taken somewhere to a hotel to go and sleep. If you do that to other tourists, they will never come back again. So this is what's happening across the continent. You waste a lot of man hours, a lot of useful time at airports. So we remove the visas so that people can travel freely. The other one I mentioned to you is this issue of traffic control. Allow the planes to move across the continent. You don't have many airlines on the continent. There's only Ethiopian airline. South African airline had collapsed. Nigerian airline also collapsed. Air Afrique, that was actually flying around Western Africa here, also collapsed. So now you have only Ethiopian Airlines and Kenyan Airways up down there. Then you have got Air Maroc. Then you have got Egypt Air. Those are the main airlines here. But again, you're not allowing them to move the people around. This is another problem. What do you call non-tariff barriers to trade? And even charter aircraft cannot move around the continent. You've got to go to clearances and waste a lot of time. The other one is the issue of Pan-Africanism. Somebody said, and he mentioned that the youth are not dressed as Africans, and the AU, but the AU basically is an organization, which can do much more for us, for Africa. African Union should be the one that is actually leading the way. But it is not leading the way because the heads of state are not ready to allow it to lead the way. In Europe now, they have a proper cabinet in Brussels. They've got ministers. And then you have got the parliament, European Parliament, which pass laws which eventually must be domesticated by all member states. The Pan-African Parliament is dormant. Just members of parliament, other parliaments go there, assemble. It's just a talking shop and waste of time. There's nothing that it does because even the reports are not even taken to the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa. It's just a waste of time. You need to have a true parliament that will make laws which will become mandatory for member states to adopt. Even the African Court of Justice is nothing compared to its European counterparts. Completely, just a waste of time. And so what we were saying is that AU in Addis Ababa needs to be energized and empowered to be able to do work which it was intended to do. At the moment, it is not doing that. That's why it's to say it is a sleeping giant. It's a sleeping giant. And if I had been allowed to go to Addis Ababa, I would have made it different. I would have ensured that it really works and does what is required to be doing. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for answering those questions. I don't know if we can plead,
yes. 2 more questions.
If His Excellency will permit us to ask, to field 2 more questions. We may have 2 more questions before.
I'm already standing.
Okay. We have the gentleman with the microphone, and 1 other person will be fine because we really have to take that break so our excellencies can go and refresh themselves. So let's have the gentleman there with the microphone first, and then 1 more person. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Great African youths. Let me stand on existing protocols with all due respect. Your Excellency, sir, you're already a veteran. All right, my name is Ambassador Okorie Ikechukwu Justus. I came here on behalf of AU Agenda 2063. How, in your own thinking, is a question that has bothered us so much in the assembly. The youths that we are producing today, with all due respect, they seem to be worse than the old people that are phasing off. Yes. Let's take, for example, the youngest governor in the last dispensation came from Kogi State. I'm not sure his performance was anything to write home about. We have a lot of young men in National Assembly. We have a lot of young men that are commissioners in states. Even in this present dispensation, the youngest governors that we have, if you have an assessment of them, they are not performing very well. So, as we are talking about the youth taking over power.
Excuse me, sir. Please, can we just ask questions? Just straight to the point. Because there are a lot of people waiting to ask their questions. Thank you, sir.
The youth taking power. What really is in it for Africa with the present crop of youths that we have? Could there be something that could be done to be able to have youths that have a lot more of integrity? Is there a way that we can produce more youth of integrity than more of extremely corrupt youths?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure His Excellency got that question. So here.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency. My name is Naomi Karim, and I am very passionate about leadership. So my question to you, sir, is as a young person who is passionate about leadership in Nigeria and Africa at large, what lessons can you share from your journey that would inspire young people to want to do better and also go into leadership? Thank you.
Thank you. And then the last question.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. My name is Issa Noah. I am a maritime professional. I want to ask the question looking at the African maritime space, the ocean. And one thing I see is foreign navies trying to protect African maritime space. It irritates me a lot. Sir, what can we do to eradicate foreign navies in protecting our waters in the African maritime space?
Thank you very much. And that'll be all for now. His Excellency will take the questions and answer them. Thank you.
Yes, first, of course, AU Agenda 2063 was really something, because 63 AU will be 100 years old. And that's why they reflected and say that when 2063, all the visions, all the ideas that were conceived by the founding fathers in 1963 will have been achieved. I don't believe in that idea of 2063. You need to really have short-term plans that are realizable, which are more realistic. So my view, we should be talking about AU 2035, then 2045, then 2050. So you plan in short-term circles that can be verified. But if you talk about 2063, you don't know how many people will reach there. And so actually people become very complacent because 2063 is too far away. But I don't think that Africa has got that luxury of time time is of essence for the African nation. We should talk about by what time do you really hope to achieve a unity government in the continent? Is it by 2063? Or should we say we want to have a continental government of Africa by the year 2040? Those are some of the questions. So if you push it too far away, people become so complacent, they don't do much and just wait until 2063 would come. So I think that is not realistic at all. We need to move much faster. Someone talked of youth being disappointment. I don't think it's only the youth who we will say would be disappointment. The older people are more of a disappointment to the continent than the youth. The youth impatient, and I'm happy that the youth are impatient today, because Africa does not have the luxury of time. We are behind. For how many years are we going to be looked down upon? Why is it, for example, not possible for us, as Madam Ambassador said, to demand some of those artifacts which were taken away from Africa during the colonial period, that they should be returned back to Africa? For how long are we going to wait? For how long are we going to wait as a continent? Then there's also the issue of reparations for our people who were taken out away from the continent in chains to be enslaved in other countries and help to create wealth there. It is the labors of the African people that built the economies of Americas. How long are we going to wait? We need to be more impatient. The older people actually are the disappointment, not the youth, in my view. You're talking about the young governors who are corrupt. Yes, the older governors are also corrupt. So don't just put this blame on the youth alone. This is a common thing that cuts across generations. I see that we have had problems in the continent of Africa. And you mentioned my colleague told you the kind of problems that we have had in Kenya. But they're not unique to Kenya. I know the kind of problems that Nigeria has gone through, for example, from independence, and then being subjected to military rules for a very long period of time. There were times when I came here to Nigeria, it was not easy to even talk to people around. My first experience when I came to Nigeria on transit to United States, those days there was the airline called Pan American. Nairobi, Brazzaville, Lagos, Robertsville, Monrovia, and then to New York. In Lagos, now it's called Murtala Mohammed International. It was called then also at that time. There are people who were hawking right on the tarmac inside in the airport itself around that time. That has now changed. And Nigeria has changed a lot for us, people who are foreigners who come here, because of changes that have come as a result of struggles of the Nigerian people. In Kenya, it became so difficult. We suffered under single-party dictatorship. And when you opposed it, of course, you were arrested and put in detention without trial. Again, in detention without trial for a very long period of time. And I was a young person at that time when we started. We were arrested, detained for 6 years. We came out, continued the struggle, arrested again, detained for another 1.5 years, out, again after a year, arrested again, detained. But that did not deter us. I eventually ended up in exile in Norway for a period. But in the end, we eventually succeeded. So these are things that I was doing when I was young in those days. Therefore, I'm saying that the baton has been passed on to the younger generation like you people. You have also to make your contribution to making Nigeria a better place to live in. All the youth must see it as their duty to make contribution to their nation at this moment, at their point, at this moment in time. This is what you say. The baton is passed from one generation to another generation, and so on and so forth. So I say the African youth unite. You should now be talking about how can we unite the African continent and remove these barriers which have been imposed by the system that we inherited from the colonial system. How can we be able to unite Africa so that Nigeria becomes a state within Africa? This is when Africa can be able to talk equally with the countries like India. African population today is 1.5 billion people, the same like India. China, same. And you can see how those countries are able to move forward and develop and be listened to in the world. So African unity is not an option, in my view. It must be made a reality. African unity must, of necessity, be realized. And it will only be realized if the youth of Africa think African. Think African first before you think Nigerian. Think African first before you think that you're from Guinea. This will help us to unite the continent of Africa. And the other one, you can see that African story is being told from outside Africa. You see, you can have elections here in Nigeria, and you win an election in Nigeria. But BBC will come up with a story saying you did not win. Or CNN. And eventually it comes out, oh, you did not win because BBC has said it. African story is being told from outside. But it's said that until the land learns to speak and tell that story, the story of the hunt will always favor the hunter. So the hunter is the one who's saying how brave he was, how he confronted the lion, how the lion tried to run away, but he feared it. Not how he feared the lion, because the lion cannot speak. So until the lion learns to tell a story. That's why until we Africans can learn to tell our story, until we have a media similar to CNN, similar to BBC, like they've done in the Middle East, they have Al Jazeera, which speaks now and tells their story. We need a similar thing like BBC, like CNN, like Al Jazeera in Africa. You will be telling the African story from Africa. That is when African story will be heard outside Africa. And I want to end by telling you the story of the African lion. African lion, you know, our lion is a very popular animal in the continent of Africa. In the Nigerian national team is the eagle, of course. The Cameroonian national team is called the Indomitable Lions. The Senegalese one is called the Lions of Teranga. The Moroccans are called the Atlas Lions. In Kenyans, they call it Simba. Simba is the animal there in Kenya. So now this is the African lion talking to the rest of the world. Is giving notice to the Asian tiger, telling the Asian tiger that you, Asian tiger, you've danced on stage alone for far too long. The European bear went to sleep in the polars long time ago. The American jaguar is also on the retreat. The African lion have been asleep here in the forest of the Congo. But now I'm awake. I'm awake and I'm surrounded by the Mount Kilimanjaro in the east, Atlas Mountains in the west. I have there with the mighty Nile, the mighty Congo, the Niger, the Limpopo, all these rivers. And I'm sleeping in the Congo forest. I'm sitting on the African diamonds, African oil, African bauxite, African copper ore, African coltan, African lithium. I have all this wealth surrounding me as the African lion. And I now have also the capacity to turn all these materials around me into wealth and to claim the 21st century as an African century. End of the story from African lion to the Asian tiger. Thank you very much.